Ohio Republican Congressman Max Miller, who previously worked in the first Trump administration, has been accused by his ex-wife of domestic abuse against her and their 2-year-old daughter. According to reporting in the New York Times, Emily Moreno, she's the daughter of Senator Bernie Moreno, also an Ohio Republican, has said that Mr. Miller scalded her chest and stomach by throwing hot water from a skillet at her body, held a gun to her head, pushed her against a wall, and hit her head, and fractured their daughter's collarbone and bruised her shoulder. According to court documents, their daughter at one point told Miss Moreno, quote, "Daddy kill you," end quote. Today, Ms. Moreno filed a restraining order in an Ohio courtroom against Congressman Miller. I'm going to stop here because at this point, this is no longer a political story I'm telling you, but a family tragedy. Likely terrified right now. And for every woman who speaks up about domestic violence, there are countless others who don't or feel like they can't. And rarely do any women speak up about domestic violence unless their lives are in danger and their children's. And these are the alleged facts here. Miller has not been charged with any crime. He has denied all the allegations, and he has sued his ex-wife for defamation over the allegations. We should also note that Senator Bernie Moreno has been publicly critical of his former son-in-law. However, he has stopped short on calling on his son-in-law, former son-in-law, Miller, to resign. Let all that sink in. If your heart doesn't ache for this mother and this very young child, let it ache for the tragic indifference of too many Americans to the issue of domestic violence. New polling in Politico shows that the MAGA voter simply does not care about the moral character of their candidates. According to those findings, 72% of MAGA Trump voters say they'd stick with the GOP candidate accused of domestic violence. 66% of MAGA voters say they would stick with the GOP candidate accused of sexual assault. It's higher than either Democrats or other Republicans. As a personal note, and MAGA, I know you're watching, look over at your wife and your kids and decide to stop being these people. Make a different choice while you still can. Joining our coverage, writer and editor for Protect Democracy, Amanda Carpenter's here, Alex Wagner's here as well. I struggle with whether to platform these stories because domestic violence is, I think is almost always terrifying for the woman, and it's only ever public if, again, she's afraid for her life or her children's life. And this person, Max Miller, was previously accused of abusing another woman. I'm going to read this also from the New York Times. Ms. Moreno is not the first woman to level domestic abuse allegations against Mr. Miller. In her memoir, Stephanie Grisham, the former White House press secretary, wrote that she dated someone else in the administration who was physically abusive. She later acknowledged she had refers to Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller denied her allegations and sued her for defamation, claiming she was trying to ruin his campaign for Congress. Alex, your thoughts?
I mean, I got a lot. We talk a lot about the net effect of the Trump years, and we certainly, they're not over, right? But we also have not begun to wrap our arms around how he has changed the body politic. But polling like this, that shows how he has lowered the bar dramatically in terms of character and integrity, to the degree that a majority of MAGA supporters would support someone who was allegedly a sexual assaulter, had made anti-Semitic comments, worn blackface. I mean, the degradation of soul, the degradation of principle and character that Donald Trump represents is not, it is not isolated to Donald Trump. He has infected thousands, tens of thousands of Americans with a worldview that you know, degrades women, degrades people of color, sees them as subhuman, and sees abusers of those people as, you know, just one of them. I mean, it is frightening to me when I read polling like that. And in this particular case, if we're talking about Max Miller and Emily Moreno, what is, I think, appalling upon being morally bereft is the idea that the reason you're not hearing much from Republican corners, you're not hearing indignation and calls for Max Miller's ouster from the race on the part of, I don't know, Bernie Moreno, is because Republicans are worried they might lose the House seat. I mean, that is such naked primal calculation that power is worth more than character, even when it's your own daughter and her child's life on the line. That is, I don't think we've seen math like that in my lifetime, Nicolle. And I think, it's hard to platform stories about domestic violence, but this is, I think, bigger than that, because it's about ethical and moral degradation and how much it's found a home in the Republican Party.
Bernie Moreno had time to abused Tony Fauci yesterday. Let me show you that, Amanda.
It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country.
So, I haven't spent a ton of time down the rabbit hole lately, but I think what they think Fauci did to the country was what Trump signed off on, which were the shutdowns of the spring of 2020. So I show you that because Moreno does have the ability to get worked up about some things.
Yeah, this whole story of domestic violence, it is a tragedy, like you said, but we can have the broader discussion about why accountability only goes one way in this environment and why these politicians can turn it on so hard against somebody like Dr. Fauci, but not only doesn't have a word to say about his family, but doesn't have a word to say about the multiple Trump transgressions over the years. Are we surprised that MAGA voters would vote for people with all these scandals after they have stood by Trump during all this time? Absolutely not. This just confirms the reality that we've all been living in. But I am increasingly, you look at what happened on Capitol Hill this week and you see all of this fire and brimstone going at Dr. Fauci. And I think that Republican voters, because this is a study of Republican voters. We can keep talking about Donald Trump doing this and the chicken or egg, but this is where Republican voters have landed. And I think a big part of it is that they are permitted by their party to look the other way, but someone has to force them to go back and look at these issues. And I'm actually seeing a bit of a silver lining when it comes to what's happened with the Blanche nomination, because after January 6th, there was a question about whether we were going to pursue accountability, whether there was going to be congressional hearings, and whether it mattered, right? And maybe, it didn't turn out how the pro-democracy reformers wanted. But we're not letting that issue go. People are not letting that issue go. And when you put it before Republicans like Cornyn, like Tillis, they say, yeah, there's something wrong with that. We're not going to do that. So we have to keep centering these issues so people can't look away from the domestic violence, the corruption, the no-bid contracts, the pay-for-play pardons, the list goes on and on. If they can do this to Fauci in a hearing, we need to put these big issues under the microscope and the lights and not let it go.
Amen. All right, we'll do just that. I have to sneak in a quick break. We'll be back on the other side.
Democrats ditched Graham Biden from their ballot after sexual assault allegations. Two members of the conference, Max Miller and Cornyn's, face domestic violence allegations. Why would you Republicans keep them in the conference, whereas Democrats are dropping somebody accused of criminally accused of sexual harassment?
Well, the key word there is allegation. We have a process here. The House Ethics Committee works on those things.
And Amanda, to your point, the history of this time will be recorded, and I'm increasingly aware of the fact when I see people like Peter Carr, the former spokesperson at DOJ, testify, everything will come out. Everything will come out. It will be known what Mike Johnson knew about these allegations, just how credible they were, who went to him, who told him about it, when he first heard about the violent domestic behavior of two members of his own caucus. Your thoughts?
Speaker Mike Johnson has gone before the cameras and said that he views it as his role to be a MAGA protector for Trump in Congress. He wants to protect Trump's MAGA majority from any kinds of accountability, and that is exactly what you saw on camera there.
Alex?
This is the party that thinks, testosterone shots are necessary for every man and has a very or every soldier over the age of 30. They have a very confused ideas about masculinity, and you see that borne out in their attitudes towards both sexual assault and domestic violence and just the aging process. I think the Republican Party needs to do a long, hard look in the masculinity mirror.
I think you're right. Amanda Carpenter, thank you. Alex Wagner, thank you for spending the whole hour with us. Quick break for me. We'll be right back.